Grupo Vale e Rede Construai Grupo Construjan apresentam Terceira Semana Integrada Internacional da FAVAG, de 26 a 31 de outubro, com uma programação digital que conecta você ao novo normal. Palestrantes internacionais, 6 palcos digitais, transmissões ao vivo, 106 atividades com mais de 144 horas de conteúdo, desafio dos terceirões com quiz interativo premiado, live shows com Lucas Eric e a atração nacional Gabi e Rafa. Terceira Semana Integrada Internacional da FAVAG. Informações e inscrições favag.edu.br.
You can watch me glow.
O valor da sua conta de energia está alto? Faça um orçamento para gerar sua própria energia solar na Supritec. A energia do momento, acessível para todos. Venha conhecer. Energia solar é na Supritec. Há 20 anos oferecendo o que é de melhor para você.
Tá valendo, tá valendo! Reconstruai!
Quer ganhar uma reforma no valor de R$30 mil? Participe da Reconstruai. A reforma pode ser na cozinha, no banheiro, na sala, você que escolhe. Dá até para transformar aquele cantinho especial da sua casa num cômodo que você sempre sonhou. Para participar é só acessar o site reconstruai.com.br. Clique em Quero Participar. Faça o seu cadastro, envie fotos do local a ser reformado e não se esqueça de caprichar na resposta para a pergunta: porque você merece uma reforma Construai? Depois é só pedir votos para todo mundo. Reconstruai, não fique fora dessa.
Tá valendo, tá valendo! Reconstruai!
Temos como valores a transparência e a ética em tudo que fazemos. Somos comprometidos e respeitamos os nossos associados. Geramos soluções financeiras adequadas e sustentáveis por meio do cooperativismo e temos compromisso e solidariedade com as comunidades onde estamos presentes. Somos a principal instituição financeira, propulsora do desenvolvimento econômico e social dos nossos associados. Somos Cicobi Credivag.
A faculdade para ser feliz conecta você ao futuro. Vestibular FAVAG 2021. Faça já sua inscrição para o vestibular agendado da FAVAG e venha fazer o curso dos seus sonhos. Acesse vestibularfavag.com.br e escolha o melhor dia e horário. Provas presenciais ou online, inscrições abertas e gratuitas. Vestibularfavag.com.br, conectando você ao novo normal.
temos um convite muito especial para vocês. Gente, adivinha só? Finalmente vamos fazer uma live. E dessa vez vai ser com uma faculdade lá de Minas Gerais. Gabi, fala aí, que faculdade top é essa que tá todo mundo falando? FAVAG, tem um super desafio, viu? Entra lá no Instagram, vocês vão conferir. Nossa live vai ser cheia de energia boa, muita música. Isso aí, muitas declarações de amor. Isso aí. E eu vou falar pra vocês, gente, estudem, tá? Estudem, levem a sério, mas também curtam, porque a vida é ser feliz. Isso aí, a galera do terceiro ano do ensino médio vai concorrer a vários prêmios e participar dos desafios. Então a gente espera vocês, tá? Bora, gente!
I could wait 1,000 days. You never wait for me. You never wait for me. You can watch me glow.
Olá, boa noite! Estamos no terceiro dia de Cifavag, o evento que conecta você ao novo normal. Mas me conta, o que você tem achado do evento? Está gostando da programação? Bom, hoje é mais um dia incrível para você e teremos palestras de renome nacional e 4 palestras internacionais. E as palestras são: os desafios da retomada da construção civil no novo normal, com Davina Márcia. Passive House nos trópicos, um desafio possível para o novo normal, com José Eusébio Silveira. Descomplicando o mercado financeiro, com Lucas Oliveira. Saúde emocional na escola, com Soraya Leal. Os princípios da inteligência artificial no Poder Judiciário, com José Eduardo de Rezende Chaves Júnior. Saúde e vida virtual, os profissionais do futuro, com Damiana Guedes da Silva. Gerenciamento de equipe por meio de plataformas de comunicação mediada digitalmente, Application Software, por Takuya Taketomi, do Japão. Enfermagem, ciência, tecnologia e inovação para o cuidado humano, com Liliana Elba Ponte, da Argentina. Madeira ecológica, uma alternativa sustentável para moradias de interesse social, com Leonel Morales, do Chile. Inteligência artificial e seus impactos nos direitos humanos, com os palestrantes Roxana Matefi e Silvian Sentiu, da Romênia. E para acessar as palestras é muito simples. Acesse o site oficial do evento, www.cifavag.com, no menu Feira Virtual, e aproveite este momento incrível de aprendizado e troca de conhecimento.
Watch me.
O valor da sua conta de energia está alto? Faça um orçamento para gerar sua própria energia solar na Supritec, a energia do momento, acessível para todos. Venha conhecer. Energia solar é na Supritec. Há 20 anos oferecendo o que é de melhor para você.
Tá valendo, tá valendo! Reconstruai!
Quer ganhar uma reforma no valor de R$30 mil? Participe da Reconstruai. A reforma pode ser na cozinha, no banheiro, na sala, você que escolhe. Dá até para transformar aquele cantinho especial da sua casa num cômodo que você sempre sonhou. Para participar é só acessar o site reconstruai.com.br. Clique em Quero Participar, faça o seu cadastro, envie fotos do local a ser reformado e não se esqueça de caprichar na resposta para a pergunta: porque você merece uma reforma Construai? Depois é só pedir votos para todo mundo. Reconstruai, não fique fora dessa.
Tá valendo, tá valendo!
A faculdade para ser feliz conecta você ao futuro. Vestibular FAVAG 2021. Faça já sua inscrição para o vestibular agendado da FAVAG e venha fazer o curso dos seus sonhos. Acesse vestibularfavag.com.br e escolha o melhor dia e horário. Provas presenciais ou online, inscrições abertas e gratuitas. Vestibularfavag.com.br, conectando você ao novo normal.
I could wait 1,000 days. You never wait for me. You never wait for me. You can watch me glow.
Olá, boa noite! Estamos no terceiro dia de Cifavag, o evento que conecta você ao novo normal. Mas me conta, o que você tem achado do evento? Está gostando da programação? Bom, hoje é mais um dia incrível para você e teremos palestras de renome nacional e 4 palestras internacionais. E as palestras são: os desafios da retomada da construção civil no novo normal, com Davina Márcia. Passive House nos trópicos, um desafio possível para o novo normal, com José Eusébio Silveira. Descomplicando o mercado financeiro, com Lucas Oliveira. Saúde emocional na escola, com Soraya Leal. Os princípios da inteligência artificial no Poder Judiciário, com José Eduardo de Rezende Chaves Júnior. Saúde e vida virtual, os profissionais do futuro, com Damiana de equipe por meio de plataformas de comunicação mediada digitalmente, Application Software, por Takuya Taketomi, do Japão. Enfermagem, ciência, tecnologia e inovação para o cuidado humano, com Liliana Elba Ponte, da Argentina. Madeira ecológica, uma alternativa sustentável para moradias de interesse social, com Leonel Morales, do Chile. Inteligência artificial e seus impactos nos direitos humanos, com os palestrantes Roxana Matefi e Silvian Sentiu, da Romênia. E para acessar as palestras é muito simples. Acesse o site oficial do evento, www.cifavag.com, no menu Feira Virtual, e aproveite este momento incrível de aprendizado e troca de conhecimento.
Vale e Rede Construai Grupo Construjan apresentam Terceira Semana Integrada Internacional da FAVAG, de 26 a 31 de outubro, com uma programação digital que conecta você ao novo normal.
I could wait 1,000 days. You never wait for me. You never wait for me. You can watch me glow.
Olá, boa noite! Estamos no terceiro dia de Cifavag, o evento que conecta você ao novo normal. Mas me conta, o que você tem achado do evento? Está gostando da programação? Bom, hoje é mais um dia incrível para você e teremos palestras. Palestras de renome nacional e 4 palestras internacionais. E as palestras são: os desafios da retomada da construção civil no novo normal, com dados.
Pode iniciar, viu, Léo?
Ok. Boa noite. Olá, professor Silvia Sentio. Sou Leonardo Souza, coordenador do curso de Direito da FAVAG. Obrigado por aceitar o nosso convite. Seja bem-vindo ao nosso evento. Passo a apresentar... Oi? Boa noite.
Pode continuar, Léo.
O professor Silvia é da Romênia, atua como professor convidado na Universidade de Bucareste, é mestre pela Universidade de Stanford e bacharel pela Universidade de São Francisco. Ele tem mais de 20 anos de experiência no ensino, realizando palestras nas principais universidades e conferências corporativas nos Estados Unidos, Europa e Ásia. É também CEO da Transcities Corporation, uma empresa de consultoria inovadora nas áreas de marketing digital e automação, Big Data, análise de dados e privacidade de dados. Fique à vontade para iniciar, professor Silvia.
Okay, hi everybody. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty here, but I hope everything got solved. So I'm going to talk to you today about artificial intelligence and its impact on human rights. I'm a Romanian and I teach at ASE Bucharest right now. But physically at present, I'm in sunny California. That's why you see actually light behind me. In Romania, it's dark at this time, but here it's still 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay. Now, having said that, let me go to the next screen. I'm going to use today for questions and answers a software called Slido. So what I'm going to ask you is if you have any questions or comments or would like me to clarify something or let's say expand on a topic, please go to slido.com. You can go directly there on the website. You can use on your phone this QR code. It's a software that does not keep track of anything, so you don't need to worry about privacy or anything like that. If you want, you can put your name in there, but it's optionally. And I'm going to monitor the questions, and I can, if something is of relevance, I'm going to probably address it right away. And if not, we'll address it at the end of the presentation as part of the Q&A. Okay. Now, also you can vote there for questions that you like, and questions that seem to be more interesting will pop up to the top. Now, the agenda for today, I'm going to introduce ourselves. So actually me primarily, but some of my colleagues that participated in this research. And then we're going to talk about artificial intelligence developments. We're going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence technology, which is something that we hear a lot of. We see it in movies and so on, but in reality, it actually is slightly different. And then we're going to talk about AI and human rights, and in particular, human rights in the area of privacy infringement, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, right of equality and non-discrimination. Okay? And then we're going to summarize and focus more on questions and answers, which I would highly encourage you to do, as I said, using Slido, and if not, we can maybe take questions in a different fashion as well. Okay. Now, you already heard a few things about me. I'm going to have the actually have the presentation today. Have talk to you. My colleague wasn't able to participate, Professor Matefi. And there are a number of other colleagues who participated in the research. We're still having the research ongoing. It's a topic that will probably evolve quite a bit in the future, and there's a strong need for integrating these technologies, artificial intelligence in particular, in society. Develop the legal framework for it, and so on. Okay, a couple of things really quickly about myself, though. I've been teaching at universities around the world. Right now, I teach at ASE, but I've been collaborating with Stanford University, which is my alma mater, and with universities in Korea, in Belarus, in Italy, in Spain, US, Canada, and so on. Okay. I said all that, let's talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. First question that I would address is, what is it? What is actual artificial intelligence? Again, we've seen movies, we've seen maybe Terminator and a lot of other movies about artificial intelligence. In all these movies, artificial intelligence is sentient. It's something that can think for themselves, and in many cases comes in conflict with humans. At the other end of the spectrum, some people think that all computing, everything that has to do with computers, is artificial intelligence. And if we think about it and put it in perspective, let's say to maybe 50 years ago, or even more, 100, 200 years ago, everything that has to do with the way we're using computers these days probably would be labeled by the people living in those times as artificial intelligence. However, this is subjective, and quite frankly, there is no one definition of artificial intelligence. As I was saying before, at the other end of the spectrum, some people think that artificial intelligence is actually a machine that's sentient, that understands that it exists, that has awareness of self. As we all know, at this present time, there is no such thing. And we don't know if this will develop or not. It's up to speculation. Most of us believe that we're actually not even close. But again, looking at historical perspective, few people would have anticipated this rapid progress in computing and machines, let's say a few hundred years ago. Okay. Now, one other definition of artificial intelligence is a machine that can learn. Okay, so it's looking for the cognitive perspective, and the assumption there is that if a machine can learn, it can evolve, it can become more, let's say, smarter and smarter, more and more knowledgeable, and that may actually lead to sentience. It's very debatable. And quite a few people think that that curve doesn't mean that it will go to sentience. It will only accumulate knowledge or algorithms, and it's actually limited how far it can really go. It's in some ways it's unlimited in, let's say, the amount of data or the speed, the connections, and so on. Even though it's theoretically not infinite, practically it can be so vast that that it has few limits. However, again, all these are different aspects of thinking about artificial intelligence. There's a researcher, Tesla, who defined it as AI is whatever hasn't been done yet. So anything in machines, in computing, in technology that we just imagine that it's something of the future, we some people label it, oh, that's AI. Okay. Now, if you think of it that way, a few years ago, let's say maybe 30, 40 years ago, a machine that can read was considered artificial intelligence. These days, we do not. We don't label it as artificial intelligence. We label it actually as OCR, optical character recognition. And to us these days, it's quite trivial, quite simple. You feed a piece of paper to a scanner. You have a piece of software that translates it to ASCII characters, and you can read it as well loud. It can actually process it. It can make decisions based on it. And we don't necessarily think that as being artificial intelligence. We think it's a machine that can actually recognize characters and maybe translate them to voice. Okay? But keep in mind that a number of years ago, we were regarding this clearly as AI. If you check the literature from 30, 40 years ago, optical character recognition was considered AI. Okay? Now, by the same token, we have voice recognition, which similarly initially developed as a machine that can understand people, animals, for example, dogs can do it to some extent. But machines can actually be quite complex, quite sophisticated. They can interpret the meaning as well as the mood and take action based on that interpretation. And these technologies are still evolving and have become quite complex and powerful. However, this as well is in the realm of maybe this AI, maybe not. Lately, we've done the same with image recognition and face recognition. Machines have become capable of recognizing images, discerning, figuring out what that image actually means. And one aspect, which actually has an implication in the legal space, is also face recognition. Probably some of you have read in the press, there are quite a few issues with that. Some companies actually have stopped developing face recognition or stopped funding it because of the legal implications, and quite frankly, because the legal framework has not caught up with technology, and that's an aspect that we're going to address today. Okay, now, in addition to the technologies that I was mentioning, there are quite a few companies that have developed humanoids. That's robots that look like humans, quite sophisticated. We all have dealt with chatbots who can actually answer our questions and direct us to the right place. Personal assistants. Some of them actually quite widespread, whether we talk about, I'm not even going to say their name because I have one next to me, and it's going to wake up and ask me what I want. But it's the ones from Amazon, from Google, and so on, from Apple, and so on. Interestingly enough, how that works, if I were to actually pronounce the name, it will wake up and ask me pretty much what I need from it. Okay? So that shows how pervasive, how widespread artificial intelligence has actually become. Okay? Now, if you look at history, there has been quite a bit of literature developments, a lot of them theoretical. An interesting aspect is if you look, if you Google it or look in Wikipedia, you will find artificial connected to things like connectionism or perceptrons. That was a big buzzword 30, 40 years ago, actually, maybe as far back as the 70s. Quite frankly, nothing came out of it. Some people might say, yeah, but that actually put the basis, the foundation of what we have, where we've gone today with artificial intelligence. Others say that it was actually a bunch of baloney, quite frankly, something that did not work, that did not go anywhere. It was purely theoretical, and even in the theoretical space, it was quite questionable. However, quite a bit of funding, effort, passion has been put in that. Later on, we developed neural networks, which are actually the basis of artificial intelligence today, in terms of how they work, how they process. We'll talk a little bit in more detail after that. And programming language, namely Lisp, was developed for that is still used today in artificial intelligence. However, it did not deliver to the level it was expected or touted, and it's used less and less today. It's not a direction where technology is necessarily going. With Lisp, it can be argued that it did actually contribute to the field quite a bit. Now, let's understand a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about what is actually artificial intelligence, how it is different than regular computing. And even though quite a few people in the audience are probably not programmers, I'm going to show a couple of pieces of code that I would say can be figured out or understood by somebody who does not have necessarily technical experience. In this case, this is a piece of code. It could be written in a number of languages. It's very similar in this kind of construct in quite a few different languages. But as you can see, it actually has what's called an if clause. It assesses whether the pay date is less than the due date, and then it tells you that for, let's say, an invoice, you have to pay $30. If the due date has passed, but it's not, let's say, past another date, then you actually have to pay a penalty of $10. So the total is $40. And if that has passed as well, now you have to pay $50. So that's how compute an algorithmic approach in a program, in an application written with a programming language, would handle a situation like this algorithmically. And that's the basis of a lot of the applications that we use today. Believe it or not, the ones that we're using right now for the conference, they are written in such language, or Slido, or financial applications, or applications that we use in everyday life, whether social media, or these days even the smartphones that we use, as they are mostly digital. Okay, now. This kind of code humans can follow and understand. Okay, somebody who audits or looks at what's happening there can go to an application, even though the programmer may no longer be available. They can read this code, understand how it works, okay, and they can debug it if something goes wrong, okay, and they can change it if we want to change these numbers, or if we want to change even the rules. Maybe we have 3 dates now, or we have yet another grace period, or we don't want to assess a penalty, and so on. Humans can actually do that. They can read the code and understand how the machine is told to work. Okay, as we will see, it's different in machine learning. Okay? Machine learning, as we were talking before, being one of the main traits of artificial intelligence. And we're going to use, for illustration, an example of distinguishing between pictures of dogs and cats. As humans, we can do that easily. We look at an animal for most cases, and we can tell whether that animal is a dog or a cat. Well, we taught computers to do that as well. That's actually quite difficult to do with programming. So another application or another approach has been used very successfully, and that consists of an underlying logic of matrices and patterns. So the image is decomposed, is put in several layers of matrices and numbers. And what happens after that, there are a couple of phases. What we do is we show the computer images. So pretty much we pass input. We teach the computer that for this particular input, namely this particular picture, the picture is a cat, and for another one is a dog. And what happens is we iterate, so we go a number of times through this process, okay? And then when we run it, when we pass another input, okay, so we show the computer another image, the computer actually provides an answer. And it tells us, based on the analysis and based on the patterns that it actually developed, it can tell whether that is a cat or a dog. It's not as precise, okay? And the more we show it and we provide feedback to it, saying, no, that's the wrong, that's actually not a dog, that's a cat, or the other way around, or we confirm, yes, that is a dog or a cat, the computer becomes better and better. To some extent, that mimics or is similar to the way people learn. However, in this case, the computer actually has an underlying structure of numbers matrices that a human looking at them cannot follow. You cannot debug it. You cannot change the logic. Okay. All you can do is change the answer. You can tell them this is not a dog, this is a cat. The computer can react to that and correct itself or use the change the patterns and the matrices. But whether it gets it wrong or not, we'll not know. Okay, we cannot go into the matrices and change a number or change something there to correct the problem. Okay, which, by the way, that's or as a consequence, that actually removes the capability for understanding what happened there and correcting it, okay? Which is a very, very important aspect of artificial intelligence. And even though computers are not sentient, they cannot think for themselves, what happens in that approach is that they no longer are strictly depending on instructions programmed or prescribed by a person. They develop computers, calling them develop a way of handling decisions or making decisions or handling input and providing output that only computers can actually figure it out, okay? Which is actually interesting and has consequences in our world. Now, what are some of the technologies where AI used so that we understand the impact? It would be good to put it in context a little and see where is AI used, what is the impact on society, and so on. Well, AI today replaces labor-intensive activities. We use robots. We use robots to paint cars. We use robots to manufacture, to lift heavy objects, and so on. While they started being either operated remotely or programmed very strictly, now, especially with machine learning, there are quite a few features built in these robots that can decide that whenever there is an interruption or a change in their routine, they can react, they can adapt, and so on. And these can be quite sophisticated. Now, AI is also used in places where we need increased accuracy, places where humans actually have a hard time keeping up, whether it's crunching at high numbers or using, for example, tools that require very high precision, and so on. Okay, lately the medical field as well, and so on. And quite often lately, AI performs activities that are actually not possible for humans, where humans, no matter how many people you have, they wouldn't be able to do it. Whether it's the simple things like lifting heavy weights, but it's where you can argue that a human can do it with the help of a tool or a machine. There are quite a few activities that where humans cannot do it. Either they cannot not do it that quickly, they cannot do it that well, or there are cases where they can't do it at all without artificial intelligence. And some examples, as I was saying, track in real time, for example, a large number of people. If you want to find a person, for example, in London, and you want to quickly find where they are knowing that, for example, you have cameras, which again has an impact on privacy and so on. You wouldn't be able to do it, no matter how many people you put forward. If you would have to provide them with the information to get the pictures of that person quickly, and no matter how many people you put forward, it's actually very hard. Also, if let's say you have cameras, having people actually look at the footage is very difficult. However, machines can actually do it. Anything that has to do with public monitoring, face recognition, and so on. Medical diagnostics. If we are to analyze quickly a large number of data, another example is self-driving cars. There are things that are put now in self-driving cars, reaction that it takes a fraction, or cars, for example, that are able to drive very closely to each other, and when one of them breaks, the other one brake, or when one of them needs to exit, they actually coordinate with each other, and they expand the distance between them, and then one of them changes lanes and so on. Personal assistants who have a large number of tasks and get very quickly to any data that they need, which, for example, if you want to ask one of these personal assistants, where's your order, or find a local service, they can do it much quicker than humans. Profiling, again, that's something that is done quite often in marketing, is tracking a large number of personas on the internet. It's done with what's called DMPs, data management platforms, to figure out what are the interests of people and tailor messages to them, personalize them, which again, some people regard as a negative aspect, because it infringes on privacy. It might actually infringe on privacy, but also quite a few people think that this is a way to sort through the huge amounts of data that we're bombarded with. There are many other examples: behavioral modeling, content personalizations, recommendations, where we go now to an e-commerce site, and the site actually knows what we want quite often. In insurance, in processing claims, in tax return processing, finding, for example, the cheaters. That's where artificial intelligence have been used, and actually, quite frankly, mistakes as well. Obviously, in military and law enforcement, and that's a very controversial aspect as well, because, for example, a machine would have a very hard time distinguishing between a child playing with a weapon, or with what looks like a weapon, and the real soldier, and might actually think that they are the same, and so on. Okay, now. What are the aspects that we're concerned with when we talk about human rights? Obviously, one of them is the privacy infringement and the risks of that. As we were talking before, being monitored even on the internet, even more so when walking in the city, is actually a privacy infringement, which most of us, we never agreed to. We were not asked whether we can actually be filmed in public, whether we can be tracked, and so on. We have the, let's say, the understanding that the public place is public, and therefore pretty much anything can happen. But the use of machines to track each movement, for example, is something that was not part of life when we agreed to these kind of let's say, assumptions or conditions. And there's a significant concern with freedom of movement, especially now, for example, in COVID. And then with profiling, we might actually be labeled as something that we might not want to be labeled, based on either in the interpretation. Maybe we looked at something because we were curious, but it's not what we're interested in. And machines actually might conclude that that's our interest, and then either bombard us with this kind of content, or withhold other content from us. Okay? Now, there are aspects in the freedom of assembly, in the freedom of speech, that can be infringed by AI. In freedom of speech, for those of you who have monitored the news in the United States, the major providers of social media, Twitter, Facebook, Google, have been audited in front of Congress yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. And the freedom of speech is actually, and the censoring of news and so on is a significant issue in society right now. To go into even more detail, the right to a fair trial can be influenced by machines who actually make certain decisions, process claims, process documents, and so on. And we can all imagine that we're not very happy with certain people processing our claims, let alone a machine where we cannot look at why did they make the decision, how did they come to that conclusion, and so on. Okay. Again, the equality before the law, it can be, machines can have inherent bias as well, just like humans, depending on who taught them, who actually went through the machine learning process with them. It has a significant impact on the right to an effective remedy because of the lack of transparency. We were talking before, you can't really tell what happened there. Okay? Now, the right to equality and non-discrimination, profiling and stereotyping are also a major aspect in this regard, and that's based on the patterns that machines use to make decisions. That can be a significant issue. Okay. Now, if we look at some of the precedents, the laws of the laws that were passed and that we subscribe to, we accept in general life. One of them is Article 7 of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights that says that everyone has the right to respect for his or her private life, home, and communication. Which is actually interesting. How would machines comply to that? Okay? That's an interesting question. Now, the collection and processing of large amounts of personal data and its impact to right to privacy, that's something where quite a bit of research has been done. Laws have been passed, GDPR, mainly in Europe, a number of other laws elsewhere. However, these laws have been criticized strongly for being half-baked, for being non-enforceable, for lacking the understanding of technologies in the space, and specifically lacking the understanding of how AI works, how machine learning works. Now, in the use of facial and voice recognition, especially, for example, by state and non-state actors in airports, banks use it quite often, employers. It has an impact on privacy. It has obviously also in the area for freedom of assembly, freedom of speech. There have been a number of high-profile court cases. In Europe, there has been one actually that involved a worker from Romania who sued their employer because they were monitoring them at their workstation. Very interesting case. We won't have time to analyze it, and therefore I'm not going to talk about it because it's quite complex. But obviously, anybody can search it on the internet and get the details. And quite frankly, when there's another aspect here is that not even the real infringement, but the concern about the possible infringement affects people. So when confronted with the possibility of having AI recognition systems and the subsequent decisions, recommendations that come with that, people would deliberately refrain from exercising fundamental rights, which is a problem in itself, which is actually infringement in itself. Okay. Now, the more advanced issues are even the aspects of a right to a fair trial because of use of AI in processing, in the judicial system. There have been actually machines used to sort through the very large amounts of data that judicial institutions are actually confronted with, and that goes actually, let's say, challenges In this case, the Article 6 of ECHR, that everyone is entitled to a fair and public hearing with reasonable time-bound and independent and impartial tribunal established by law. The moment machines come in, they actually tip the balance, and these kind of aspects are become questionable, become they create a problem where, for example, somebody can be disadvantaged either by the system itself or by an adversary, whether that adversary is the state or another private party, if they are actually using AI. Especially people who cannot afford to use AI, for example, to defend themselves or to exercise their rights. Everyone whose rights and freedoms are violated needs to have an effective remedy. And then that question again is, if we are in the situation where we can't really figure out what happened and how, the question is it possible to actually promise or secure or guarantee an effective remedy as stipulated by the international laws? Now, a question that's even more, let's say, general, or if you want, philosophical, is that would we agree to the idea that being judged and sentenced by a machine learning system, okay, would we subject to that? Would we think that maybe it's even better than humans, or maybe not? How accurate would be the judgment of a computer, okay, with AI? And especially when dealing with someone's freedom of deciding, a simple question is the custody of your children. Let's say two parents go through a divorce. Would you want to have a human do it, or would you accept, or would you even be open to the idea of having a machine decide that? Especially a machine where nobody can actually tell what exactly happened there, what was the basis for those for the decision. Now, keep in mind, again, I'm going to repeat this particular aspect because I don't want to necessarily sound alarmist. Somebody can say that's the case these days with everything that we're doing where we're using machines, and actually that's not. Almost every program or application or computer used today, at least theoretically, with a little bit of effort, can be analyzed, and we can actually figure out what happened there. Programs can be looked at. We can understand, we can debug, we can understand their code, not so much with artificial intelligence. With the patterns being evolved, we don't have the tools. It is possible that at some point we might develop the tools to look into the basis for decisions in AI, but right now we don't have them. Okay? Now, the other aspect here is, would we accept proof or pleading done by AI? Let's say you're another party, another private party, for example, sues you, and they have AI on their part. Would we actually accept that? Would that be fair? Would we be able, or would regular people, be able to stand a chance in front of a machine? These days, we have the fundamental problem that if you're facing a very good lawyer, you're at a disadvantage. What if you face an AI? Okay. Now, you can also, by the way, lawyers are actually, they are credentialed. They go to school. They maybe, at least theoretically, have certain level of ethics, maybe some humanity. In some cases, it's debatable. But anyway, in the case of AI, that's pretty much not the case. And you can ask, what's the credibility? What are the credentials? You might even ask the question, what's the version? How does it really work? What are the features? Who tested that? And so on, to be actually acceptable in a court of law. Now, the other question that we're faced in the legal environment is, if something happens, okay, which is problematic, in this, let's say, harm is being done or damage is being created, who is actually held accountable? We don't have the laws to decide that. Okay? Would, in such a case, AI be responsible? Okay? Is the programmer, is it the manufacturer, is it the purchaser, the person who paid for it, or is it the operator? Okay? The person who actually has it in use or even owns that machine. Who is actually responsible? Okay? If a damage happened, now we know, for example, in the case of cars, if somebody runs a car and kills somebody, most of the time it's the driver that we hold at fault. But there are cases when the machine had an inherent fault itself. In that case, we might want to hold the manufacturer of the machine responsible for that. And in AI, that's again an issue where we don't have the laws nor the precedent. Okay. Now there are other rights that are already under attack, even in our regular society. Some of them we made significant progress over the last maybe 100 years or so. And some of this or part of this progress, some of these rights are now under fire. It's questionable whether they can actually survive in an environment with AI. The basic, let's say, the underlying principle, as expressed in by the United Nations Human Rights Committee, UN HRC, is that any distinction, exclusion, restriction, or preference which is based on any ground such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, and so on, which has the purpose or effect of nullifying or impairing the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise by all person of an equal footing of all rights and freedoms, is discrimination. Okay? Now, that's the basis. A lot of these factors are the basis of machines actually distinguishing. So is it even possible for a machine to actually not use these kind of attributes or factors in taking action or taking a decision? Now, there's some progress. The Toronto Declaration of Protecting the Rights to Equity and Non-Discrimination in Machine Learning System has a number of principles that were established. However, keep in mind that it's a declaration, and so it's a very early stage action or process in establishing law. Some of these are, for example, they stipulate the discrimination risk, that the goal of that we should actually move towards, namely intentional and inadvertent discrimination, use of incomplete or biased data sets, which is very easy to do if you feed to a computer a data set that it's biased or it has been tampered with. Most machines can actually not tell, and machines are not built with these, let's say, safety triggers in them. Also, if they have limited input, for example, they were trained by a certain culture, then it will not apply to others. Okay, and the goals here are to prevent and mitigate against the discrimination risks. In both by the state, by public actors, and by private parties, ensuring that there are mechanisms allowing for effective remedy, which again, these tools in the artificial intelligence space are problematic, and then also to promote diversity and inclusion, which is again an item that is highly discussed or emphasis is put lately quite a bit. Okay, now what are the different actors doing? What are the duties of the states? We can't defend ourselves from these risks on our own. So we do have to rely on the states to identify the risks, to ensure transparency and accountability. To do that, by the way, they need to understand the phenomenon, to enforce oversight, to not just to enforce when something goes wrong, but to make sure that to prevent things from going wrong, to promote equality, as we have all agreed and voted and made significant process in the last maybe couple of 100 years, and then hold private sector actors accountable. In order to do that, obviously, the legal framework needs to be created. What are the responsibilities of private sector actors? Is even before the laws are being passed, to identify potential discriminatory outcomes, and laws can be passed to actually put that responsibility on the private actors, taking action to prevent and mitigate such discrimination, and obviously to be transparent about efforts to ensure equality and non-discrimination. Pretty much state whether and illustrate, document what are these efforts, because in many cases, also because of pressures to move quickly, to increase the speed to market and so on, quite a few efforts to ensure to mitigate risks, to ensure that these aspects, that the risks are minimized, are not there at all. Okay. Now, also what we found in our research, and what quite a few of the actors in this space, other researchers and states and other players in the field are recommending, is to understand the consequences of deploying and actually developing and deploying artificial intelligence. Quite a few people involved in this look more at the coolness factor than at the consequences, to secure a consent, okay, and especially selective consent in cases where it matters. We don't want to bombard people with consent or risk that they will not consent to anything, and then states, for example, need to act even against explicit lack of consent, for example. Flag issues and report concerns and become involved in this space. And obviously protect ownership power over own private data. That's something that we need to do ourselves. It's also not easy to do. To use a simple example, quite a few of us now have our DNA tested because it's cool. Maybe we find cousins or people who we lost touch with and so on. But nobody knows what actually happens with this data. Okay. Now we have a couple of minutes. I didn't see questions yet, so if anybody has any questions, anything that we would like to discuss, I would actually ask you to put them in Slido. In any case, to go to conclusions, what I'm going to say is that artificial intelligence is rapidly evolving. We're looking at what we have today. Some aspects are becoming everyday use. Everybody uses them. And a lot of these actually we end up controlling better, but the ones that are on the fringe, that are more advanced, that are not part of everyday's life, those are some of the least understood, that they can have a significant impact because of that. From the legal perspective, we want to have understanding in early stages. When something is being developed, we would like to understand the implications early rather than after it's been put in the market. That can be argued, by the way, about social media as well. And then keep in mind that we don't have the legal framework to account for legal responsibilities of machines. And there are many machine learning functions that work as I was highlighting in a certain way. And even if coding can be attributed, learning is a very gray area. Again, algorithms, we can back engineer if the code is missing, we can read it if the code is there, we can debug and so on, but the machine learning, not so much. Keep in mind that there's a potential harm to fundamental rights, and that harm is not negligible according to our research. By the way, as I was saying, research that is still underway. And the understanding of evolution of legal aspects must be accelerated. We see a very strong need to have laws keep up with developments, because the technological advancements are moving very, very fast. Okay. With that, I saw one lone comment. Thank you very much for whoever put it there. I appreciate it. However, it's not a question. We are at about time. It's 5 o'clock even where I am, and I would assume it's 9 o'clock in Brazil. So I'm going to stop here. I hope that the presentation was useful. Thank you very much for inviting us, and I would encourage you all to advance the understanding and especially the concern for implications in society and in the legal framework of artificial intelligence. Thank you very much.
I could wait 1,000 days. You never wait for me. You never wait for me. You can watch me glow.
Que dia incrível de evento! Eu estou impressionada com as palestras, os palestrantes foram maravilhosos e amanhã tem mais. Então continue nos acompanhando aqui no site oficial do evento e também nas redes sociais. Uma ótima noite a todos e até amanhã!
Watch me glow.
Vale e Rede Construai Grupo Construjan apresentam Terceira Semana Integrada Internacional da FAVAG, de 26 a 31 de outubro, com uma programação digital que conecta você ao novo normal. Palestrantes internacionais, 6 palcos digitais, transmissões ao vivo, 106 atividades com mais de 144 horas de conteúdo, desafio dos terceirões com quiz interativo premiado, live shows com Lucas Eric e a atração nacional Gabi e Rafa. Terceira Semana Integrada Internacional da FAVAG. Informações e inscrições favag.edu.br.
You can watch me glow.
Temos como valores a transparência e a ética em tudo que fazemos. Somos comprometidos e respeitamos os nossos associados. Geramos soluções financeiras adequadas e sustentáveis por meio do cooperativismo e temos compromisso e solidariedade com as comunidades onde estamos presentes. Somos a principal instituição financeira, propulsora do desenvolvimento econômico e social dos nossos associados. Somos Cicobi Credivag.
Vale e Rede Construai Grupo Construjan apresentam Terceira Semana Integrada Internacional da FAVAG, de 26 a 31 de outubro, com uma programação digital que conecta você ao novo normal. Palestrantes internacionais, 6 palcos digitais, transmissões ao vivo, 106 atividades com mais de 144 horas de conteúdo, desafio dos terceirões com quiz interativo premiado, live shows com Lucas Eric e a atração nacional Gabi e Rafa. Terceira Semana Integrada Internacional da FAVAG. Informações e inscrições favag.edu.br.
You can watch me glow.
Temos como valores a transparência e a ética em tudo que fazemos. Somos comprometidos e respeitamos os nossos associados. Geramos soluções financeiras adequadas e sustentáveis por meio do cooperativismo e temos compromisso e solidariedade com as comunidades onde estamos presentes. Somos a principal instituição financeira, propulsora do desenvolvimento econômico e social dos nossos associados. Somos Sicoob Credivag.
A faculdade para ser feliz conecta você ao futuro. Vestibular FAVAG 2021. Faça já sua inscrição para o vestibular agendado da FAVAG e venha fazer o curso dos seus sonhos. Acesse vestibularfavag.com.br e escolha o melhor dia e horário. Provas presenciais ou online, inscrições abertas e gratuitas. Vestibularfavag.com.br, conectando você ao novo normal.
Fala galera, nós somos Gabi e Rafa e temos um convite muito especial para vocês. Gente, adivinha só? Finalmente vamos fazer uma live. E dessa vez vai ser com uma faculdade lá de Minas Gerais. Gabi, fala aí, que faculdade top é essa que tá todo mundo falando? FAVAG, tem um super desafio, viu? Entra lá no Instagram, vocês vão conferir. Nossa live vai ser cheia de energia boa, muita música. Isso aí, muitas declarações de amor. Isso aí. E eu vou falar pra vocês, gente, estudem, tá? Estudem, levem a sério, mas também curtam, porque a vida é ser feliz. Isso aí, a galera do terceiro ano do ensino médio vai concorrer a vários prêmios e participar dos desafios. Então a gente espera vocês, tá? Bora, gente! 31 de outubro, bora acompanhar essa live, vocês não podem perder, não. Valeu, galera! Fala, galera, nós somos Gabi e Rafa, temos um convite super especial.
I could wait 1,000 days. You never wait for me. You never wait for me. You can watch me glow.
Que dia incrível de evento! Eu estou impressionada com as palestras, os palestrantes foram maravilhosos e amanhã tem mais. Então continue nos acompanhando aqui no site oficial do evento e também nas redes sociais. Uma ótima noite a todos e até amanhã!
Watch me glow.